God created the angels with fiery, dazzling brilliance. As bright and stunning as these magnificent beings are, God said that your potential is far greater. Learn how even the angels desire to glimpse God's plan for you next on The Key of David with Gerald Flurry.
Greetings, everyone. God describes the angels' face or faces as the sun. And he also talks about them having feet like pillars of fire. He talks about them being as burning coals and a bright fire around them and as a part of them. And out of that comes lightning. Some amazing descriptions that God gives of angels and their power. And one of the scriptures, it talks about the righteous army that God has, an angelic army, and they come with horses and chariots of fire. Always this fiery majesty that they have. And did you know you are to become greater than those angels? You will be far more, have far more character and greater minds and power that transcends what they have. Just think about that. It ought to make you maybe a little dizzy to think about that, but that is shown to us in many scriptures in the Bible. Many scriptures. So, what is man's potential, and how will we compare with the angels when we fulfill that potential? If you look in the New Testament in 1 Peter 1 and verse 12, it says the righteous angels are desire to look into this creation of man and God creating himself in man, and they're just mesmerized by that they too are in awe of what God is doing with man and what potential man has. We need to understand that, and it really is the most stirring part of the Bible, I think. Man is to become greater than the angels. Notice Revelation 10 and verse 1. And I saw another mighty angel come down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was upon his head, and his face was as it were the sun, and his feet as pillars of fire. Angels have all that power and might, and their faces shine like the sun, and their feet like pillars of fire. And imagine, though, man was created and it is going to become far greater than that. Now that ought to certainly get our attention, but can you really believe that? Can you really deep down believe what God says your potential is? Verse 2, it says here, and he had in his hand a little book open, and he set his right foot upon the sea and his left foot on the earth. So here the angel has a worldwide message. One foot on the sea and one on the earth. It's worldwide. This is a message for everybody. And these angels deliver that message for God. Notice verse 3, and he cried with a loud voice, as when a lion roars, and when he had cried, 7 thunders uttered their voices. I mean, these angelic beings just exude power and unbelievable power in some measures. In some way we would look at it anyhow. It's just something that ought to really galvanize us to look into it, because what is man? Why is man to become greater than the angels? What is the reason for that? What is the cause? So let's take a closer look at our potential compared with the angels and their angelic power. Let's turn to Hebrews 1 and verse 1. Here it talks about God in the first verse, and God in verse 2 says He has in these last days spoken unto us by His Son. And what did He say? Well, notice verse 5. For unto which of the angels said he at any time, You are my son, this day have I begotten you, and again I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son. Now, Paul makes a point for us to compare. Now, let's compare man's potential to the power of angels and what they're doing today and will be doing forever. Here's what we wrote in our correspondence course. Certainly you can request it and get it for free. And there are 36 lessons, and it really will educate you to what is in the Bible. Here's a comment from one of those lessons. Man, now lower than angels, has a destiny far higher. Neither animal nor angel, nor any other being except man, was created to be literally begotten by the spiritual reproductive process and then actually be born into the divine God family. Angels were not and never can be begotten and born of God. No angel can ever become a literal member of the divine family of God. Now that is your potential he's talking about. Let me read that to you from the Moffat translation, verse 5. For to what angel did God ever say, You are my son, today have I become your father? Or again, I will be a father to him, and he shall be a son to me. That is something that an angel cannot say, because they don't have man's potential. This is what they can say. God, but did you ever hear God say to any of those angels, You are my son? And the answer is no. No, they never could say that, and they can't pray to God as a father in the way that mankind does. Not in this context at all, because he is not their literal father. And they are not his literal sons, as we become just that. See, here is something where we can go to God every day if God has chosen us today. We can go to him each day and call him my Father. We can say, we can pray to our Father and are told to do so. And yet in that same context, the angels cannot do that. They're not a part of God's family. God is recreating himself in man, not in any angel. That's where the angels are lacking and why they couldn't be trusted to rule over the universe, which God originally planned for them to do. Man is to become far greater than the angels, and the angels' faces shine like the sun. Well, what will man look like? What is he going to look like? Well, he'll even have a greater brightness than that. Notice verse 13. But to which of the angels said he at any time, Sit on my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool? Now, you see again, when did God ever say to the angels, You sit on my right hand, on my very throne, right, as my right hand person? The very bride of Christ, sitting on the same throne as Christ. No angel will ever do that. No angel ever will do it. God never said to any angel that you will sit there on my right hand and on my throne and rule the world with me. He never said that. Not one. And he never will say it. See, and those who are called and chosen today can even receive a greater reward, because they're the ones that are going to sit on the throne with Jesus Christ and help rule the rest of all of humanity that's brought into the family of God, and that will include some resurrections, which is also discussed throughout your Bible. See, today the first fruits, or the saints, are being prepared to rule with Jesus Christ on his throne forever over the earth and over the universe. which is what God originally planned for the angels to do. But only God Himself can rule the universe, so He had to decide to recreate Himself in man and assure that the universe would be ruled properly. Verse 14, and are they, the angels, not all ministering spirits sent forth to minister for them who shall be heirs of salvation? Heirs of salvation. They're going to minister to you. They're going to serve you because you're an heir of salvation. You're going to be in God's family and saved from this world and all of its evil. And if you're doing this obedience today, you're going to be the bride of Jesus Christ. And never, ever was anything like that offered to an angel. Never, and never will be. Nor will it be offered to any other man that is brought into God's family after Christ returns. They're not going to be called the bride of Christ. Those people and those saints will be ones that God prepared before Christ's coming. And remember it says in Revelation 19 verse 7, His wife has made herself ready to rule over the world with Jesus Christ. What a future! And not only the world, but the entire universe. What a calling, what power, what might that God is going to give to man. But let's go on now and read Hebrews 2 and verse 3. How shall we escape if we neglect so great salvation? Then verse 5, for unto the angels has He not put in subjection the world to come whereof we speak. Do you know that God has chosen us today, those that are doing His work, to rule the world? That's what He's talking about. He said the angels weren't ever called to do that. They weren't ever called to rule the world. But you were. Man was. The first fruits are. Now even those that are not called before Christ's coming are still going to be sons of God and in the family of God. So man has an awesome future any way you look at it. Let's look at Hebrews 2 and verse 6. Hebrews 2 and verse 6. But one in a certain place testified, saying, what is man that you are mindful of him? Or the son of man that you visit him? You made him a little lower than the angels. You crowned him with glory and honor, and did set him over the works of your hands. You have put all things, the Moffat says the universe. You put all things. You put the universe in subjection under His feet. For in that He put all in subjection under Him, He left nothing that is not put under Him. But now we see not yet all things put under Him. Well, yes, God hasn't done it yet. But that's man's potential, to rule the universe as Christ's bride. That's what his future is. If he's obeying God before that second coming, but even afterwards, they are still sons of God and the family of God if men give themselves to God and are obedient to Him. Notice verse 9. But we see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels for the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, that He, by the grace of God, should taste death for every man. For it became Him for whom are all things, and by whom are all things, and bringing many sons unto glory. See, this is all about bringing sons of God to glory, far greater glory than the angels have or ever will have. Now, how about that for a calling? To make the captain of their salvation, He's going to save us, perfect through suffering. I mean, that's just unparalleled glory. And how can we take that lightly? How can we neglect so great a salvation? That's what Paul is asking. This is a glory far, far above what the angels will have. And we ought to think about that. You ought to think about that. I ought to think about that very deeply, because how can we take this lightly? How can we neglect so great a salvation? Hebrews 2 in verse 11. For both he that sanctifies and they who are sanctified are all of one, for which cause he's not ashamed to call them brethren. Not ashamed to call them brothers and sisters or family. Our elder brother, Jesus Christ. We are God's family. And Jesus Christ is God's begotten, His only begotten Son. He was sent to this earth as the Son of God and as a man as well. And while He was here, He had as His purpose to declare the Father. John 1 and verse 18. Let me read to you a verse over in Ezekiel 1 and verse 13. Ezekiel 1 and verse 13. As for the likeness of the living creatures, or the angels, their appearance was like burning coals of fire, and like the appearance of lamps. See, burning light. And it goes on to say, it went up and down among the living creatures, or angels, and the fire was bright. And out of the fire came forth lightning. You have all this brilliant light. And out of that light came lightning. You talk about power and brilliance and might that the angels have. And yet God says what you are going to be given as a man, a human being, is far greater than what they have. Can you fathom that? Can you grasp and comprehend that? They're just darting around like lightning. And yet, they don't have the power that you and I are going to have as God's own Son, as God is creating Himself in us, if you can believe that. We ought to be in awe of it just like the angels are, and moved and stirred by that wonderful, precious, inspiring truth. How can we not be? Let's look at 2 Peter 2 and verse 11, 10 and 11. Chiefly them that walk after the flesh in the lust of uncleanness, and despise government, presumptuous are they, self-willed. They're not afraid to speak evil of dignities. These are rebellious men. Verse 11, whereas angels, which are greater in power and might, bring not railing accusation against them before the Lord. See, here's God telling us outright that that as far as men are today, the angels are greater in power and might. But man is about to become greater in power and might than the angels ever could be, ever will be. Now, all that power is going to be given to man. You know, if you think about it, well, we have to have the character of God in us. We have to have His mind. That's what even Genesis 1 and verse 26 is about, when it talks about being made in the image of God, or the very character and mind of God. That's power. That's the power of God He's giving us. That's exceedingly above that of the angels. Do you believe God? Do you really believe that? Can you say that you believe that wonderful truth? And yet God says it is there, and it's throughout the Bible, and you can believe it, and God will give you the faith to do so if you'll just obey Him, and He'll show you that. What a wonderful, wonderful calling God's people have. Let me read to you what Herbert W. Armstrong wrote in his book, Mystery of the Ages. Here he says, so the angel potential was to take over the entire universe, to improve and finish the billions of physical plants surrounding the uncountable stars, many of which are suns. See, the universe was like unfinished furniture. God wanted them to finish it and make it beautiful, much like parts of the earth. And If you look at Isaiah 35, the earth is going to blossom like the rose all over the earth. Everything's going to be beautiful like that. And then on to the universe, and it will blossom as a rose and be beautiful all throughout the universe. Mr. Armstrong continued, but God started this Lucifer out with everything going for him. He sealed up the sum of wisdom, beauty, and perfection. He was perfect in all his ways from the instant he was created until iniquity or lawlessness was found in him. That lawlessness is a better translation. 1/3 of the angels rebelled, and it showed God that He couldn't trust the angels to rule over the universe. He couldn't do it because they failed. 1/3 of them failed here on this earth. He knew then that He had to have the very character, His own character and mind to do it. And only God would rule over the universe and could be trusted to do so. So He decided to recreate Himself in man. He'd already decided it long ago, just in case plan A failed. He had a plan B, and what a plan B it is. He was going to recreate Himself in man. That's the ultimate creation of even God. Even He can create nothing greater than that. Imagine, He says in Matthew 5 verse 48, "Become you perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect." Otherwise, if we don't build that character in us, we'll fail just like 1/3 of the angels did. Now look, Satan has turned his power. He still has a lot of power. And Lucifer, the fallen Lucifer, and he leads this world in lawlessness. We just recently heard about 4 policemen being shot in one 24-hour period in 4 different cities. Now that's what Satan is doing to this entire world. He's leading it into violence and the greatest destruction ever known to man, and it'll get so bad that Christ Himself is going to intervene and going to stop it. He has to, or His plan would be certainly off track, to say the least. That's the way it is in this world. Now man has, been created to finish the universe and make it beautiful and finish that creation of God and make the earth beautiful and all of that by supporting Jesus Christ and God the Father, the family of God. Let me just read you one more scripture here in verse 15 of 2 Kings 6. "And when the servant of the man of God was risen early and gone forth, behold, an host compassed the city, both with horses and chariots. And his servant said unto him, Alas, my master, how shall we do? And he answered, Fear not, they that be with us are more than they that be with them. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray you, open his eyes, that he may see. And the Eternal opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. Here you saw this great angelic army of God. And then this young man looked up and saw that and compared it to that physical army that was about to attack them. And he saw these horses and all of these chariots of fire and these angelic beings. And he knew that physical army had no chance at all. Now that's the kind of protection that God gives to His people, if they'll trust Him. He does try and test them, of course, but He also protects them from all of the terrible violence and evil of this world. But look, God says, or Elisha said to ask God to open this young man's eyes. Open his eyes so he can see. And see this great power that that God has and that great power that God is going to give to human beings. Now that's, you see, we must have God open our eyes. That's the only way we're ever going to understand this wonderful, precious, beautiful truth. Until next week, this is Gerald Flurry. Goodbye, friends.
God created the angels with fiery, dazzling brilliance. As bright and stunning as these magnificent beings are, God said that your potential is far greater. Learn how even the angels desire to glimpse God's plan for you. God promises unparalleled future glory to any human being who chooses to obey Him. Even now, God is reproducing Himself in man. Request our free book, The Incredible Human Potential, to discover the purpose and calling of man. Learn how Jesus Christ's gospel message has everything to do with you. The truth about mankind's existence is so astounding that science, religion, and education can't explain it. Prove how the whole world has been deceived regarding man's purpose and the way to peace. To grasp who you are, why you were created, and what your future holds, request The Incredible Human Potential. The Apostle Peter cultivated a vision that helped him to withstand any trial. Request Gerald Flurry's free booklet, The Epistles of Peter, A Living Hope, to learn how to build your life around Peter's vision. Peter knew more than his fellow apostles about God's plan for man. Despite seeing his friends and brothers killed for preaching the truth, Peter remained positive because he had captured the vision of his awesome future. Discover the parallels between the times in which Peter lived and this present evil age. Understand how to remain steadfast and spiritually strong even in the darkest of times. To develop a hopeful mentality during the onslaught of bad news today, study The Epistles of Peter, A Living Hope. You will also receive our free reprint article, Mystery of Angels and Evil Spirits. Understand in depth the greatness and power of the angels. Learn about the evil spirit forces that hold mankind captive, even though most people refuse to believe they exist. Discover your ultimate destiny as a son of God, a future that even the angels can't claim. All our literature is available free of charge at no cost or obligation to you. Request The Incredible Human Potential, The Epistles of Peter, A Living Hope, and Mystery of Angels and Evil Spirits. Order today.